Hello, everyone. It's good to be back here. We are live. Welcome to ShagalinkuTv. On Tuesday, we talked about social media bullying. Why are people doing it? Why are people not taking into cognizance the psychological framework of others when they bully people online? And I had two guests on Tuesday. Chinasa was here. Oladotun was here to talk about that. Today, this Saturday, beautiful Saturday it is, I'm having two guests from different parts of the world, okay? So technology has made it so great to have people from any part of the world they are in, just a good network, and you'll be on to them. Today, we'll be looking at something very important. We're looking at human trafficking, but we're also looking at, is it that poverty, maybe greed, maybe the quest for sustainable future, it's making people fall prey into the hands of human traffickers? Because sometimes people only look at the bad side of human trafficking and see just the traffickers as the issue. We're not also looking at the people who sometimes present themselves to the traffickers and say, we want to get a better life outside our clients. They even pay huge sums of money to get themselves trafficked. So we'll be looking at all this. Is a conversation actually, and I have my two wonderful guests. Paul is here from Kenya, and Ornella is here too from Dublin, Ireland. First of all, okay, well, I would have said Paul should introduce himself first, but then they say ladies first, right? So we are good gentlemen. Ornella, how about that?
Hello, everyone. I don't think there's much introduction here to do, but I'm just going to say that my name is Ornella Nana. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland, and I'm an advocate. I'm an international advocate, and I do advocacy work both at governmental level and community level, just on different topics such as racism, we have sustainability, and so on. So I met actually Emmanuel in Paris, I think it was in 2016. When we first met, and I think that's where we connected. So I'm happy to be back on the show here. So yeah.
Thank you. It's good to have you again after a long while, and thanks to the internet for bringing us back together. It was a good experience in Paris. I think when we'll talk about racism later, maybe in the week or sometime, it will be good to bring that topic and bridge it together again. So good to have you, Ornella. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Paul, finally, you were billed to be on this program 3 occasions, and 3 times you couldn't show up. And that was why I got scared and said, let's start the program together so you don't go off any longer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But finally, here I am. My name is Paul Adhoch. I work with an organization called Trace Kenya. Trace Kenya is a counter-trafficking persons organization based in the coastal city of Mombasa in Kenya, eastern part of Africa. We work mainly to fight human trafficking in all its aspects, and fight trafficking against children and fight trafficking against adults, predominantly women and girls that are victims of trafficking. We also work to fight trafficking in the context of migration, which probably will inform a lot of what we'll discuss this afternoon. Emmanuel is a good friend of mine. I've met him online several times, gone Ori, but we last physically met in Dar es Salaam about 3 to 4 years ago. So I'm glad to meet you yet again online.
Yeah, it's good to have all of you. So welcome, guys. Okay, so let's start off the discussions. And for everyone who is watching us right now, all you need to do is just click on the comment section, drop your comments there, and we'll be reading it as the program progresses. Ornella and Paul will be responding to your comments or questions as it may be. And we've got pretty much of them, lots of them here. So we'll read them as the program progresses. But let's also have a background of everything. Now, Paul, you've been very active in human trafficking. Let's even start from the basics. What is really human trafficking? And is it out of poverty, greed, or quest for better life? It's making people fall prey to traffickers.
Well, first, human trafficking is the situation whereby one human being takes advantage of the vulnerability of another and exploits them, usually exploitation for labor or sexual exploitation. And this advantage is usually out of power. It's a power play game. So someone with more authority, power-wise, ensures then that the other person who's less powerful is taken advantage of and exploited. So the bottom line is exploitation, and the definition, the classical definition means that you remove an individual from one place to the next place for the purpose of exploiting them, and that's why women and children tend to be easily aggrieved in this manner, because they are less powerful in the context of humanity. Why are people victims of trafficking? The very first one is what I've explained, their vulnerability. The fact that they are weaker, they are not strong like the next person. So then they become easily vulnerable, easily lured to trafficking. But there are other aspects of trafficking, particularly in the context of migration, which I just need to allude to you very fast. The first one is what you call aspirational, where this mainly affects young people, young men and women who like to get out of their country or their neighborhood to another neighborhood where they believe there's better opportunities. So this aspiration does not necessarily mean that the person trafficked is any vulnerable or poorer. They could be very learned. However, they feel that where they stay, there isn't sufficient opportunities for them. So then they seek opportunities elsewhere, and they easily get lured into trafficking. Traffickers take advantage of the fact that they are aspirational and therefore not sure where they are in the new environment. Second one is the subculture in the area of origin. There are communities right across Africa who believe that your future lies beneath the soles of your feet. So they always ensure that if you want to be successful, you must leave this place. You must get out of here. Go out there. Your future lies out there. So these communities tend to have a lot of migrants in the migrant population. And you find that they also become easily victims of trafficking. Yes. The other one could be what you call peer influence. And this peer influence is not just about the individual who becomes victim of trafficking, but also the parents and the community around. For instance, it's classy, it's nice, it's gisty to say, my daughter has sent me this gold ring from Dubai, and my son has sent me this nice watch from US, and
Italy.
This dollars from this and that place. And so when a man talks of his sons and daughters abroad, then the other man says, well, I should also encourage my children to go abroad. But usually when then they go abroad, they do anything to make sure they travel abroad, then they end up finding themselves victims of trafficking. The final one could be just an internal issue that both relates to poverty but also personal comportment. If an individual gathers a lot of debt and then they now seek to clear this debt, they may think it's easier to travel abroad where there's more money and work from London to be able to pay back this debt on behalf of the family. Then in that process, then they become easily lured into being victims of trafficking. So those, in my mind, are just some of the 5 areas that trafficking oscillates around.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'll come back to Ornella. Ornella, you've been in Dublin, Ireland, and you're a young person who's worked, consistently on issues that affect young people and all that. Bearing in mind what Paul has just reeled out as some of the issues, are there very resilient things that young people fall victim of in the whole of the scenario of human trafficking that you have witnessed and you might want to throw more lights on before you even go on to talk about what you think could be human trafficking, looking at the youth angle from this whole issue? Because sometimes when we talk about human trafficking, it could mean different things for married couples, for adult male, adult female, but it could mean something else for young people. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I would say, it's in support of what Paul was talking about earlier, that young people in general would be the most vulnerable people in human trafficking. Like we're looking at women and children in general who are mostly affected as compared to 26% of men who would generally be affected by human trafficking. And in that regard, we're looking even more so of women who are younger, are more trafficked into sexual abuse and stuff like that. And so I would say young people, because of their vulnerability in the society, would be more affected by human trafficking more so than, you know, older people or men in that regard. But also, talking of human trafficking, for me, I think as a young person, it's important to understand the fundamentals of where this comes from, because it's not only a topic or a problem that is occurring today in our society. You know, it's something that has been rooted in our history right from the ages of slavery. You know, before the 19th century, we had colonialism and imperialism happening, where there was human trafficking for trade and various purposes. So I think looking at that from that perspective kind of give us an angle and an approach to it on how to solve the problem today. Because, you know, one thing was that after the colonialism and the imperialism era, which governments decided to sort of abolish the human trafficking in policies, it still remained very current in our mind, and it's a whole mindset now where people did not kind of detach from it because the root was already founded there. So I think it's a major problem, and that's why we continue to see it to today.
Yeah, so let's even talk, before I come back to Paul, to let us know how serious it is, especially from countries to countries, because continents also differ when it comes to trafficking. Yeah, so let's even look at it, Ornella, from the female angle, because when we also talk about young people and human trafficking, we're also looking at young girls, you know, so to say, who in the quest for whatever. Yes, Mr. Paul has also talked about it could be for labor actually, but then we also know that majorly at the back of the human traffickers' mind, they would want to like kill two birds with one stone, you understand? So yes, for a guy it will be solely labor, but they also know that when they have a lady being trafficked, they could use her for so many purposes. So she could serve as a sex slave, she could serve as a factory worker, she could work. We've even seen children, you know, young girls, teenage girls, 9 years old and the rest, who are trafficked and they end up working in bars, you know, as bar attendants and all that. How worrisome is it for you as a young person, a female who's been doing a whole lot to make sure, because we're talking about girl child education, and a lot of times the effort gets frustrated, because in Africa you're advising parents to send the girl child to school, but aside trafficking, you are finding parents also marrying off their children. So they may not be trafficked, but they are marrying off their children, and we are not attaining the level that young girls should have education. So how worrisome is it for you, Ornella, before I come back to Paul to talk about more stringent things about human trafficking?
No, as a young woman, I would say that it's very, very worrisome. And to see even the number being so impartial between men and women. I mean, we have women victims of at 74% in women in human trafficking as compared to men. And that is huge. The disparity between the numbers are huge. And that's why, for me, like campaigns, we have leaders like Michelle Obama who support campaigns about education for women, and this is paramount to solving these type of problems, because education at the end of the day is key. I mean, if we can get more women into education, I think that's in a way part of solving the problem that it is, because like you mentioned earlier, if women are being married off, or if women are being sold off to prostitution and stuff like that, I mean, part of it is because there is a lack of education somewhere as well. So I think for me as a woman, it's very worrying, and it's something that I would definitely love to be more active in finding a solution for.
Okay, good one. Thank you, Ornella. Well, in case you just joined, the program is ShagalinkuTv. It comes your way every Tuesdays and Saturdays, 2 p.m. West African time. We take topical issues. We talk about issues that affect humanity. And we'll also ask you to be part of the program by dropping your comments, and we'll read them alongside our guests who respond to them. Today, we'll be looking at human trafficking as regards to why people go into human trafficking. Could it be for greed? Could it be for poverty's sake? Could it be that it's a quest, like Paul said, where parents and peer pressure also want to pressurize the victim to go abroad just because XYZ family is sending things across to them? Maybe sustainable future is what they are building on. We're looking at all that. So please send your comments and we'll be reading them as the program progresses. And you can also drop, you can make a call. The numbers are scrolling on the screen, and my guests will be here to respond. I'm having Ornella Nana from Dublin, Ireland, and I'm having Paul Adhoch from Mombasa, Kenya. And well, I'll come to you again, Mr. Paul. You reeled out a whole lot of reasons why human trafficking it's thriving, and I must tell you, it's scary. You know, because if you're in a country and you're striving hard to go to school, to earn a living, to do XYZ, you now see your contemporaries or families where one person had gone to one country or the other, and then they are sending in money. They are also not looking at the very dubious side of it. You know, drug peddling is also another very silent point that people are not also talking about. And then there is the worrisome part of organ harvesting as well, because we found that recently that most times people get adverts on social media or online that there will be free payment, you don't have to pay money, there'll be jobs waiting for you. And then they get there, we discover that there is organ harvesting, you know, and all that. How worrisome it is, especially for you that work within the borderlines and all that. How worrisome that in spite of all the enlightenment, you still find people who want to be victims voluntarily. How worrisome it is for you?
It's absolutely worrisome. And indeed, the numbers of people globally in one form or another of human trafficking and slavery is more than ever when there was slavery on earth. You know, we consider it's considered that about 30 million people are in one way or another different forms of slavery globally now. This is the global index on slavery, that Polaris global index on slavery, that points out this. And it's very worrisome. It's more so because whenever communities are vulnerable, for whatever reason, mainly economic reason, then the chances that there'll be huge number of more young people joining the group of slavery increases. Whenever there's conflict of any nature, the same happens. Whenever there's pandemic like the current COVID we are going through, the outcome of it will be a huge number of young people will travel to seek better opportunities, to run away from the effects of the COVID, and in the process, many of them will end up in enslavement. Women are particularly vulnerable to this, as Ornella has well put it, because in many ways they are, you know, women leave home. In our African context, women leave home to get married, to look for jobs, or to basically to leave home to go elsewhere. Young men will likely to stay back and till the land or take care of the family, property, family and stuff. However, women are dispensed away in that manner, and in many cases, they are the easiest victimized whenever they do not get opportunities to go to school. Then there by itself they become easily dispensable from that community, and that way they fall prey to forced marriages or early marriages, which are indeed forms of slavery in the real context of slavery. In that when a girl is made to marry someone for bride price, you know, then it is indeed a form of slavery. And by her departure from the household, she releases the resources to the fewer people that remain within that community. So these are some of the contexts that we have. It's even more worrisome in the African context, in that conflicts are still by far and large happening within and about our boundaries. You know, there are terror or jihadist activities, there are terror activities, there are cross-border fights, there are internal strifes. You know, these are still pretty common within the African context. And and a huge population of Africans are displaced and IDP and refugees. And by so becoming, they are then easily vulnerable to trafficking, or they wish to leave their country or their region for one way or another to seek opportunity. Right.
Okay, thank you. Ornella, let's come back to you. You've been active in sustainable future issues. I know it could be difficult, you know, sometimes when you talk about issues like this, because people feel that going abroad or living in Europe or any other developed country, it's a bed of roses, so to say. I remember when we were in Paris and we were shocked every time we leave the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Remember, every time we need to go for events at different places, and then we enter the train to get back to the hotel, we see a lot of destitutes on the streets and even at the metro stations. And it's shocking for people sometimes. When we return back, I particularly, when I get back to the airport and I'm coming back to Nigeria, I just find the strange looks on the faces of the people at the counter, like, I mean, your visa is still there. Why are you coming back to Africa? Is something wrong with you? There are people who will have just 1 week visa and they will never, ever return back. So they look at me with that strange face. Is this boy mad? What are you going back to do in Africa? So how has a challenge, before you come to your success stories, I like hearing the challenges you've been through, because sometimes when you talk, they won't understand that you've also been experienced in the field work, you've also traveled, and all that. They will say it's because you're young, it's because you have the opportunity, it's because blah, blah, blah. So how has it been challenging for you, talking about sustainable future and talking to your peers and all that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Emmanuel. I think it's a great question, that it's a great topic that you mentioned, because when we talk about sustainability, there's always this concept of the European dream or the American dream, you know, that things are in a greener pasture, like, you know, elsewhere than where we are. And I guess that's one of the things, the very topic that motivated me to actually found a movement called International Youth Empowerment. Because for me, I believe that every young person has the capacity to develop themselves wherever they are. I mean, like, where you're from or where you live shouldn't determine where you're going to go. So that's why I founded the movement in the first place, to empower young people to realize their potential, to utilize their resources, to sort of maximize their results. And even talking about sustainability, yes, there is a concept there, you know, that if you leave a certain continent to another one, you're going to find it better, or you're going to have a greener pasture. But the reality is completely different. And I think when people make that crossover, and along the way, or when they arrive to their destination, they get hit with the reality and the shock, and that can create in itself mental health for many people. And I think it's a topic worth bringing online, and so people are more aware of these things, that it starts where you are, and you can even utilize your potential. Even looking at you, Emmanuel, I mean, you've made several trips over here for different conferences, and kind of see how things work as well, and seeing the reality of how things function. And you can then compare both worlds and say, okay, there's actually just more opportunity here, because we are still an emerging country as compared to an established country. So therefore, you can utilize more resources in this area to sort of maximize your capacities and potential.
Yeah, good one. Okay, I'll come to you, Paul, but let's take a few messages now, and then we'll come back and talk with Paul. I need you to also tell me a whole lot of what Trace is doing in Mombasa and even Kenya. So who will read this first? Okay, ladies first. So Ornella, please help us read this message from David, and we could respond to it.
Okay, so it says, in my opinion, poverty is not basically the reason, but it's one of the factors. This is because many who are involved in human trafficking do so mainly with the aim of making money at the expense of the trafficked persons without any consideration to what happens to them afterwards. Hence, they keep making money without attaching value to the lives of trafficked persons. Many get involved in the business with intent of escaping poverty, but get entrapped and continue with human trafficking, I guess he wanted to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I have another one here. Paul will just help me. Paul is your namesake here, so help me read this.
I'm sorry, it's too small. Could Ornella kindly help me read through?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
So it says, aside poverty, I've seen a lot of people who fall victims after leaving the country because of their greed.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I got it.
Beautiful. Yeah. So any response from that before we go to Paul to tell us more about what Trace has been doing in any response to any of the comments that our guests? Let me see if I have one more so that we could just take all. There were other comments that came. Okay, I got one here. It's from Karim J.A. Jackson. Oh, my very good friend. It says he's sending his message from Asia, Philistines, actually. It says, Black American media abroad in Asia watching you from the Philistines island. Wow, thank you very much. So Nella and Paul, you've been watched in Philistines. Thank you so much, Karim. It's good to have you join us. Okay, Paul, let's talk about Trace. Just as I asked Ornella about the challenges they've had, putting out issues surrounding sustainability and reforms and futuristic activities for young people. What are some of the things that Trace, I like hearing the challenges, you know, before the success stories, because sometimes everyone knows about the successes, you know, it's everywhere, but people don't know the stories behind, you know, they don't know there are times you are even at risk. The traffickers might even threaten you, you know, because to them, you're spoiling business for them. So what are some of the challenges? Because also like what we do in gender-based violence, you find a woman who is being violated, she's beaten or abused by her husband, you get lawyers, you get psychotherapy for her, you come the next day, she tells you her husband didn't beat her. There's nothing you can do. You find a young girl who's been raped in a family, you bring all the support, you beg her, please come to the hospital so you can even be checked in case there are, you know, diseases that is associated to rape. You come back the next day, the rapist had bribed the family, and you come the next day, the family is telling you nobody was raped in the house, and there's nothing you can do. So what are some of the challenges that Trace has in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. A lot of our challenges relate to adult victims of trafficking, but let me just touch a little on the children side. On the children's side, according to the Kenyan law, the parents or the guardians should be privy or should be part of prosecutorial purposes. So indeed, the very same setback that you've just mentioned does happen here, where let's say the perpetrator interferes in the investigation and then either threatens the family and then they pull out of an issue that you had presented before court. So this does happen pretty much. But the biggest challenges are not about children, because the laws on children are more comprehensive and you can be able to support them easily. It's adults. Adults are some of the adult victims of trafficking or potential victims of trafficking are some of the hardest people to deal with, because one, you could rescue an adult victim of trafficking from some of the worst forms of trafficking, maybe abroad, and bring them back home and rehabilitate them and try to settle them. But several months later, they are right back where you rescued them. So you're in trouble. You're wondering now what happened to this. Well, secondly, you could present a matter, and they are very much eager to present the matter before court. But on the last day, they say, no, I don't think I need to go on. I like to pull out. Just this very morning, I had a case of a young man from Burundi who wanted to get support because he felt he had been a victim of trafficking and brought all the way to Mombasa. But now when we requested him to avail his documents so that we could help repatriate him. He said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. Someone just called me a family friend, and I've changed my mind." And we prepared, and it's a Saturday morning. I should have taken a break, and that does happen. So we have that. The third one is that you get threats and lots of threats, particularly from international trafficking gangs. A case in point is some time back we got some ladies from Asia who had been brought into Kenya as victims of sexual exploitation. Now, when we were halfway through following up the matter, we then get these threats, real serious threats, where they were even sending individuals to the shelter house that we keep to try and rescue or remove these girls from there and abduct them and send them back on their own, so that the matter before court could not be presentable. And then the next matter, which I think is a serious concern, is this bribery and corruption that occurs a lot in areas of trafficking. And this go hand in hand with the violence that goes with that kind of work, because this is an underground work. The perpetrators are usually international criminal gangs, so they tend to bribe their way, bribe law enforcement, and then they are able to reach out to you. So you are very vulnerable as someone working to fight and support victims of trafficking. So these are just some of the challenges that we get. And of course, the issues I just mentioned earlier, the vulnerability, peer influence, subculture, aspirations, these ones also work against all the information you may work very many years to communicate to the public, that these are some of the reasons why you should be careful about being a victim of trafficking. The next thing you find that someone who attended your very public forum is the very one asking way to be transported to the very area that you told them, please watch out, look out on this. Then they find themselves in trouble. So those are some of the challenges.
Terrible. Okay, I will come back to you, Paul. I need Ornella on this. Personally, I know sometimes as activists or advocates, we're not also supposed to give our personal opinions. But the truth is, we are always on the field, so we know what is right and wrong. So yes, it's not about just giving your personal opinions, but it's also stating the narratives, because you've been there, you've seen it and all that. What to you personally could be an end to human trafficking? We may not end it, but then we could create more awareness to reduce the number of times people become victims. So what do you think we can do to help out people? Because yes, we may say poverty is not just the issue of being why people are willing to be victims of traffic, but the truth is, an angry man is an angry man, So he or she will always, a person will always look for a better life. So even when they see people fall into the Mediterranean Sea, they see it all over the news, they read in the papers, they see just recently over 200 people were brought back from different countries, and they narrated their ordeals. It was horrifying. But that same day, you will see people still wanting, presenting themselves, even begging the traffickers. Now, what do you think about it? Personally, how do you think we could curb all this? Bearing in mind sustainable reforms and futuristic plans as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good question. And the main problem for me that I find with human trafficking is the part that the victim is also part of the problem. Sometimes they are volunteering to be human trafficked, and even like with the current migration crisis that we've seen in recent years, we've seen a number of people volunteering to actually be to be trafficked over
as victims,
a better future. So the main problem with that is that, out of the human trafficking problem that is reoccurring, we only have 0.4% of those who have fallen victim of the human trafficking identified, because identification is a major problem as well in solving this problem. So in terms of finding a solution, I think we kind of have to work together. I know, for instance, that the US has put sort of a framework in place, which is the person in traffic. I think it's called the tip, or the traffic person. So basically, it's holding every government accountable to the identification process of the human trafficking problem that is reoccurring in different nations. And they've categorized countries in 3 tiers, which is like the first being the highest and the third being, I think, the lowest.
The lowest.
So in that regard, that kind of help as well, because we have agencies and NGOs that are working towards finding a solution in that. But I think because of the border problem, governments also play a major responsibility, also have a major responsibility in the accountability that they provide in that regard. So I think it's something that we all have to play in, both from the people that are being trafficked, both from the active NGOs, the agencies, and the government sectors need to work together to sort of solve it. In terms of what exactly can be done, I don't think there is a specific thing that can be done, but I think it's something that we can all work towards finding a solution for. But at the moment, I already like the categorization of countries, which kind of help to push or even lobby governments to put more emphasis in solving and identifying these people coming from different borders through human trafficking.
Yeah, thank you very much. Paul, let me quickly read some more messages. They didn't send it on that session of the comment. They sent it on your posters. And by the way, your flyers were making hit. Everyone kind of liked your flyers and the pictures there.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me read some of the messages that came in here. This one is from Fidosi Aliyu. It says, yes, poverty can be the reason for human trafficking, but some are just being deceived by the distinguished traffickers, thinking they are helping you, because poverty is a very serious disease that can lead someone astray. Being trapped in it can make someone not to think of anything other than being into slavery, stealing, trafficking, etc., not knowing the consequences all that may cause. I think the right thinking people that are facing the challenges should do is to be contented with the little they have. They shouldn't be deceived by the traffickers or any form of it. Thank you, Fidos. I got this one from Solomon Ebere, and it says, good afternoon, Ambassador, and our guests from Ireland and Kenya. Even as I speak to you, people still engage in human trafficking after all the warnings on TV and radio. What do you think can be done, really done to stop or at least minimize it? I think I asked Ornella that even before I saw this message. I got another one here from Patrick Oloromi Uku from Abuja, Nigeria. It says, hi people, the topic has got me cracking. Poverty and trafficking. Poverty is the state of mind, negatively or positively. Yes, that's why Dolly Parton in one of our songs say, one is only poor if he chooses to be. So this is attributed to poverty. Trafficking is not an avenue to wealth. If one is poor, he or she can take up a paid or manual job to make ends meet. Some people are locked into human trafficking, and at the end of the day, they are raped, molested, drugged, and some even killed in the trafficking process. The person tends to lose family and friends and might end up being sex tools, and most times, quite a lengthy one, so just pardon me, and most times are made to pay huge money because during or after the trafficking to the trafficker or something. With all these mentioned above, you can see poverty is not just the reason for human trafficking. Let's get the right thinking and be hopeful for the best to success. Okay, thank you. That's Patrick Uku is a medical practitioner from Abuja. Any comments on that before we go on, before we proceed?
I think someone mentioned education. I definitely key into that, because education is such a huge, huge, huge sort of lane to resolve this problem. Because if you think about it, when you are educated, I mean, your brain start sort of shifting. I think it's the whole question of mentality as well. When you start getting when you educate yourself on certain aspects or in certain field, you start thinking on how to sort of better yourself. I mean, your thinking level become at a different level. You start thinking differently on how to sort of self-improve yourself, and sort of maximize where you are and how you can utilize, where you are and the resources that you have, rather than having the mentality of, okay, maybe if I cross the border or go elsewhere, then I will find it better there, and then get lured into that loophole of being human trafficked externally. So yeah.
Okay, Paul, I'm going to ask you this. Solomon, or one of the people who sent in messages here, said something that caught my attention, because a lot of times people get trafficked and they get trapped as well. So yes, a lady gets trafficked, she becomes well for labor, because it kind of, reading some of the comments here, it kind of just gets to me that trafficking could even be in grades and graduation process. So a lady is trafficked ordinarily for labor. She gets to a stage, because someone said something that I think it's Patrick, that they could, and the person starts working just to recoup money for the trafficker, and then gets to a level, she graduates and become maybe a drug baron or a drug trafficker, or becomes even recruited to the syndicate of traffickers and are able to bring more people. So someone is trafficked, and she gets to the country, becomes a don herself, and then she becomes even the link to bring more people from Africa or from wherever. So how do we even begin to break this chain?
Yeah, Patrick's observation is quite correct, in the sense that many times a victim of trafficking ends up being a victim multiple times. They first, if they are victims of trafficking for, let's say, forced labor, they go to a country with let's say a tourist visa, then they end up working. Now they are working out of status of the local government there. Then they are underpaid, they're paid less than what they expected to be paid. And then they are made to pay back the money that was used to bring them over. So for a long time, they are struggling to pay back. And when they are unable to pay back, they can only, if they are women, for instance, then they are told, okay, if you offer sexual favors, then it will offset parts of the payment. And if, on the other hand, you help me to introduce us to another citizens from your country, it will also help offset, and you'll earn, So the trafficking only festers on trafficking, and it becomes bigger and bigger as time goes by. Indeed, as we speak now, you'll find that lots of victims of trafficking also become drug mules, because they are helpless. So then they are used to transport drugs from one place to another. And when they are caught in the process, the trafficker has nothing to lose, because it's not a friend. It's just someone who they found, and they use her as best as they can. And in that process, the victim of trafficking becomes more and more victims of circumstances around themselves, more often criminal circumstances, building on fear and exposure to potential death in the event that they say who has lured them there. But let me just weigh in on something that you mentioned about what is it that we can do to stop or to, at least to mitigate human trafficking. It's not true that we can do nothing about it. We can do quite something about it, and that's why at Trace Kenya we are at work. Otherwise, we'll have folded our hands long ago and given up. There are certain things that can be done. The trafficking within the local context, because there's a lot of trafficking that happens within the country itself and local context. This one can be done by a lot of awareness, resilience building, to particularly children, women and girls, and what you call social protection from different governments. But external trafficking is another ballgame altogether, and this one also affects international trafficking. But one of the biggest problem in this is when governments close their borders. They build walls around their borders and externalize their migration processes. For instance, in Nigeria, if you needed a visa to the UK, you'd probably be asked to go and pick it from Accra in Ghana, and the Ghanaians would be told to pick theirs from Abuja. In Kenya here, our visas are processed in Cape Town in South Africa, right down south, instead of somewhere north, which means then the UK government, I'm using this as an example, has externalized their border. They've extended their border further away from where the visa applicant could get it. And therefore, whenever someone comes and say, oh, well, I can get you this visa within 2 days and just pay me 50 naira and you'll get it. So any person will say, well, let me go for this shortcut. After all, I'm not traveling. And if I lose it, I'll only lose my 500 naira or whatever it is. And if I get it, I'll get it and I'll give it a shot. So whenever countries make travel through their borders very difficult, traffickers are very happy because they say, well, look, I can help you. Yes, I can help you get through this. So then they exploit those opportunities. And that's why going to Europe, for instance, is very difficult. And people are willing to do all sorts of very, very dangerous travel to try and make it there. So those are some of the areas that needs to be touched on. Once this happens and travel becomes safer and easier and migration is predictable and known, then it will be easier for traffickers to lose that side of travel. They look for other ways of dealing with it. And the more we disrupt traffickers' pathways, the better it is for potential victims of traffickers. Then they'll become safer.
Wow. Okay, Ornella, as we wrap up, I'm going to be asking you to also, I got this one here. Ornella, please help us read this. It's from Kenya as well, from one of Paul's sister.
All right. Yeah.
So it says, while it's not the only reason, poverty is the greatest drive to human trafficking. Unsuspecting and naive men and women cross the continent to the Middle East and end up doing indignifying jobs that they would do at home while being treated like animals. There are people who would do anything to escape poverty. Yes.
That's from Adiambo Odiambo, Eunice.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so we're wrapping up. I'm just enjoying these discussions and conversations, and I wish we could just go on and on and on, but maybe we'll just do a part 2 and integrate other components that we need to basically talk about. We will also maybe have a part 2 where we talk about racism and all that, because it's also a borderline, so to say. So as we wrap up, I would need each of you to, in 1 minute rather, just say your pattern shots. So we'll start with Ornella once again from Dublin.
Okay, just the conclusion of everything, is this?
Yeah, yes, or any other thing you needed to have said that you missed out. You just say all that, and then you could also do your conclusions. Yeah.
Okay. And first of all, like I really thank you for organizing this and highlighting this and giving us the opportunity to talk about this. And the one thing that I wanted to say as well is that we tend to focus often on the victims, and we also need to look at the traffickers and also understand that human trafficking at the moment is still very, it's a huge
criminal
market.
Offense.
Yeah, not only a criminal offense, but for the traffickers itself, it's a huge market, it's a huge industry, with 150 billion, going on there. So I think we also need to be more stronger in terms of the punishment for the traffickers, apart from the victims, but also for the traffickers. And I just want to leave a message to everyone, just to say that if you can create awareness, in your own community, in your own local area, please do so, because it's still a very huge topic, and it's a huge problem that we're trying to fight. It's not going to end today, but we do our best, and we each have an individual responsibility, to play a part in that. So
yeah, we keep pushing. Okay, Paul, your final words.
Thank you, Emmanuel. One, I'd like to thank you very much for giving us this platform to discuss this matter. My parting word regards to the fact that a lot of migrants in Africa are actually from Africa. 85% of migrants in Africa are from Africa. Usually when they go to another African country, the situation does not come out as trafficking in any way, which means then that there's sort of a natural solution to an African problem within the African continent itself. And we can take advantage of this to build the open borders amongst Africans and work within Africa and reduce vulnerabilities. For instance, a lot of Africans from, let's say, Central Africa cross into Eastern Africa, running away from internal conflicts in their countries. And then they find succor within the Eastern Africa country. And their lives moves on, and they're better placed. And as long as we consider them part of the brethren and treat them well, then they become part and parcel of our social milieu. And this builds us. It does not destroy us. Never do migrants come and take over jobs. I keep telling young people in Kenya, for instance, that I'm yet to see policemen in Kenya recruited from a group of young men from Burundi or from Congo, DRC. I only see Kenyan policemen recruited from Kenyan population citizens.
Yeah.
But I see lots of young men and women from neighboring countries in Kenya doing other works that a lot of young Kenyans will find not very good for them. Yet the same young Kenyans will leave Kenya and go and do them in South Africa or in Nigeria or in Middle East. So it's a matter of perspective. So this thing, do it well here, create your wealth within the country, and sustainable livelihoods are achievable even within our own borders. So this will really be what I would like to tell young people. Sustainable livelihoods are achievable within our borders. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys. You've been amazing. But I will let you give your greetings and felicitations to people. I know you have organizations, you have partners you work with. I think this is just a huge platform where you also say your thank yous to people who've been supporting your work, to individuals who have also helped out. So I'll just let you have the floor to give your felicitations or greetings to people, whoever you want to right now. So over to you, Ornella, once again.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you, first of all, to my family, who is always supportive of my work, but also to the One campaign, which I've been a young ambassador for a very long time. Also the Department of Justice in Ireland, and all the NGOs and agencies who are working day and night, to solve this global problem and other problems that aligns to these type of things. So I would want to say a massive thank you to those.
Thank you very much. Okay, Paul, your greetings and felicitations.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you very much to young Africans across the continent. And I'll start with you, Ambassador, because you've been consistent in supporting us in the manner in which you've just done. I'd like to say the same to an organization in Ghana called Child Online. In Southern Africa, we have a gentleman from Malawi called Caleb. South Africa itself, we have Pumla. We have in Tanzania, Rome, and our friends right across Africa. Then, of course, I'd like to thank our partners, particularly the international organizations that support our work, majorly from Netherlands, Australia, the US, and those that come from Kenya for the work that they do. Thank you very much. And we assure them that the little that they give us in terms of contribution goes a very long way into supporting young men and women and children that find themselves victims of trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, this is the size of the program. And thanks to everyone who watched, everyone who also contributed, who sent in messages on all our phone lines. And thanks once again. A huge thank you to my guests. They are very busy people and they took our time to just be here for me. Ornella and Paul, I really, really thank you for finding time to be on Shagalinku. And I hope when we fix the part 2, you'll be available too. Thank you to everyone who supported this program. And thanks to everyone, my team and I. We will do it again on Tuesday, God willing. We'll be here to have another topic. My name is Ambassador Emmanuel Gabari, urging you to have a beautiful Saturday. And remember to touch a life. And remember also to stay safe. It's still real, COVID-19. So stay safe, wash your hands regularly, and wear your face mask if you must go out. Till I see you on Tuesday, have a beautiful day and enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Yeah.